Hello and welcome to the LLG Grapevine podcast. You're listening to Helen McGrath, Head of Public Affairs, and Dennis Hall, LLG Bulletin Editor.
Hello, everyone.
In a week where artificial intelligence is causing concern, Russia has taken the presidency of the UN Security Council, and former President Donald Trump has been indicted. Closer to home, it appears that the long-held belief amongst some that private practice lawyers are far superior to public sector lawyers still perpetuates. Dennis.
Well, of course, not all lawyers hold this misconception, but some do. And some adopt the attitude to young lawyers that work comes first, whatever the impact on well-being. So, Helen, I want to begin with a piece on how young lawyers will no longer put up with the old cultures that persist in our profession. Here we go. There is the myth still that private practice is made up of tougher, tenacious, and frankly more talented lawyers than their counterparts in the public sector. The story goes that they work from the outset in more personally challenging environments in private firms, and what distinguishes them, according to legend, is the expectation that they, unlike us, get on with it, no matter what the it might be. The myth usually begins when you start your training in a firm, as I did, and those supervising you will, more often as not, emphasize that this is not a myth, but your new working reality. So just get on with it. Even to this day, I remember my boss saying when I announced that I was going into local government that my legal career was now effectively over, that it was tea and biscuits from here on in, and a working life composed of leisurely afternoons with very little to do. And for him, local government involved entering a world of relaxation, unruffled calmness, and contemplation of the pleasures of life, but in the slow lane. Even membership of the local law society reinforced this view. To join from local government, you paid the same fee as a retired solicitor. Well, some attitudes are definitely changing for the better, and young lawyers will no longer put up with the notion that what is nowadays described as a toxic working environment is a part of the job and that you simply must get on with it. A representative of junior lawyers has recently rejected the attitude of some in the profession that young entrants should put up with toxic working conditions. Victoria Zinzan, a member of the Junior Solicitor Advisory Group, said there needed to be a balance struck between growing a thick skin to survive in the law and being subject to the type of conditions that cause well-being issues. Zinzan was speaking at the Law Society's Risk and Compliance Conference about workplace culture and the SRA's increasing involvement in this area. The regulator carried out a thematic review into workplace culture last year and, earlier this month, said that it would pursue any firm through the disciplinary process if they created toxic working conditions for their staff. And Zinzan was asked specifically whether junior lawyers should effectively get on with it and accept that difficult working conditions was simply a part of starting out in the profession. But she said that there was a preconception when entering the profession, that juniors had to be available 24/7 and had to impress their supervisor at all times. They could never say that they were working at full capacity, which, in my day, was the ultimate proof that you were unfit for promotion. Zinzan continued, just because we're in a hard profession, that doesn't mean that it is acceptable to just get on with it and burn out as a result. This is not an attitude anyone should have to accept. There is a strong difference between working hard and burning out. Now, Elizabeth Rimmer, Chief Executive of legal mental health charity Lawcare, said that because this profession is regarded as tough, that it did not mean it has to be a toxic work environment for lawyers, and especially those just entering the profession. Well, back to our side of things. As for the public sector, I've been an assistant solicitor, team leader, monitoring officer, and corporate legal advisor. And at each level, there are many challenges. And, as you know, that is certainly no myth.
Quite so, Dennis. Now, perpetrators of antisocial behaviour will face swift and visible justice, increased fines and enhanced drug testing as part of a new crackdown launched by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Under the plan, 16 areas in England and Wales will be funded to support either new hotspot police and enforcement patrols in areas with the highest rates of antisocial behaviour, or trial a new immediate justice scheme to deliver swift and visible punishments. A select few areas will try both interventions, and following these initial trailblazers, both schemes will be rolled out across England and Wales from 2024. Now, hotspot trailblazer areas will see an increase in police presence alongside other uniformed authority figures, such as wardens in problem areas for antisocial behaviour, which includes public transport, high streets or parks. The increased presence will help deter antisocial behaviour, step up enforcement action against offenders, make sure crimes are punished more quickly, and drive deterrence efforts, hoping to stop antisocial behaviour spiralling into more serious criminality. Offenders will be made to wear high-vis vests or jumpsuits, and work under supervision could be made to pick up litter, remove graffiti, and wash police cars as punishment for their actions. And victims of antisocial behaviour from the local community will be given a say in offenders' punishments to ensure justice is visible and fits the crime. The government's anti-social behaviour action plan also provides for local authorities and the police to establish mandatory reporting of key anti-social behaviour metrics and work with the courts and housing providers to improve overall quality of local data. Dennis.
Next, a council is in the news for the failure to deal with a backlog of FOI requests and has received an enforcement notice from the ICO. Here's the detail. The Information Commissioner's Office has issued an enforcement notice to the London Borough of Lewisham for failing to respond to hundreds of overdue requests made under the Freedom of Information Act. The notice comes after information access requests by the ICO revealed that the local authority's poor performance was much worse than statistics recently published online. At the end of 2022, the council had 338 overdue requests for information, 221 of which were made more than 12 months old, the ICO reported. The oldest unanswered request was submitted more than 2 years ago on the 3rd of December 2020. Now, while the council was focusing on new requests to improve its compliance with the statutory limit of 20 working days for a response, this was at the expense of tackling its backlog of older requests. Following inquiries by the ICO, it became clear that the council had no concrete plans to address this issue. The enforcement notice requires the council to respond to all outstanding requests over 20 working days old, no later than 6 months from the date of the notice. And it also calls upon the council to devise and publish an action plan which formalises measures to mitigate delays in responding to requests. Warren Seddon, Director of FOI and Transparency at the ICO, said, "By failing to respond to these requests, Lewisham is keeping hundreds of people in the dark about information they have a right to ask for. People need to have confidence in the decisions being made by their local authority, and this council's failure to comply with the law erodes both trust in democracy and open government." He added, "This is our second Freedom of Information enforcement notice in recent months, and I hope it is clear that we will be taking action when public authorities fail to be both transparent and accountable." An enforcement notice is issued under Section 25 of the 2000 Act and requires a public authority to take specific steps to comply with Part 1 of the Act. A spokesperson for Lewisham said, "We wholly accept the enforcement notice from the ICO's office and recognise our current performance in responding to freedom of information requests is simply not acceptable. We're already taking steps to address this, including bringing in extra staff to focus on resolving older cases. We are fully cooperating with the ICO and will be publishing our improvement plan in due course."
Now, in other news, the Department for Education has announced that all supported accommodation providers for looked after 16 and 17-year-olds will be required to register with Ofsted and meet standards from October 2023. The new regulations include the introduction of new mandatory quality standards in supported accommodation and a robust Ofsted inspection regime. The measures mean that from October 2023, all providers of accommodation for children in care or care leavers up to the age of 18 will be regulated by Ofsted, with providers able to register from April. The Minister for Children, Families and Wellbeing, Claire Coutinho, said, "Every child deserves a safe and stable home with a support network that looks out for them. Supported accommodation at its best does that, while also helping young people in care develop the confidence they need to lead a fulfilling life after care. But we know that for too many, standards have fallen short." Now, Ofsted will begin piloting inspections with specially trained staff later this year to develop their approach and guidance ahead of inspectors beginning nationally from April 2024. Key features of the Ofsted regulatory regime include enforcement powers and offence provisions, such as right of entry powers and the prosecution of providers who do not register. It's almost unbelievable that providers haven't, up until now, been required to register, considering the vulnerable nature of the children in their care. Hopefully, this new requirement will now safeguard the provision of accommodation to those who are, by definition, vulnerable children. Dennis, what's your last item for us today?
Well, Helen, I'll tell you what's been on my mind recently. It's the issue of consultation before councils act or put in motion what they've decided to do. The Sheffield Trees case and now the Plymouth City Council tree case demonstrate what can go wrong, and badly wrong, when consultation isn't properly carried out or where residents are simply ignored. Often, however, the legal cases on consultation are about adequacy or compliance with equality duties. But sometimes they're about whether the need to consult has actually arisen, like the recent Kensington Cycle Lane case in my next item. Familiar principles in relation to consultation have been restated in the Crown on the application of Better Streets for Kensington and Chelsea against Kensington and Chelsea Royal London Borough Council, in which it was held that there was no duty on the local authority to consult before deciding whether to reinstate temporary cycle lanes that it had just removed. The case says that the court should be cautious about inferring that a duty to consult had arisen in the case of a democratically elected public authority. A duty to consult might arise where there had been an established practice of consultation, or where, in exceptional circumstances, not consulting would lead to conspicuous unfairness. Even where, in a rare case, a common law duty to consult actually arose, the authority would have considerable leeway to decide the nature of the consultation exercise. And a finding that a consultation exercise was unlawful by reason of unfairness would be based on a finding that something had gone clearly and radically wrong. And in deciding whether anything had gone wrong, a court would have regard to other cases that had come before the courts, and reference was made in particular to the judgments in the cases of Gunning, Coughlin and Mosley, where the key legal criteria were established as law. Now, for more information on the cases referred to in this item, please go to the posting and details of the judgment that is cited there for the Kensington case.
Now, taken from the LGA briefing, the Public Administration and Constitutional Affairs Committee heard evidence from the Levelling Up Secretary and Minister for Intergovernmental Relations, Michael Gove, last week. The minister said moving toward a system of directly elected mayors is his preference, although achieving unanimity in local government mechanisms across every council is unlikely. However, he said evidence points towards the efficacy with which mayoral combined authorities drive economic development and progress. When questioned on his preference for MCAs as opposed to a system in which councils could choose any structure they preferred, the minister said that having a mayor at the top provides the maximum amount of accountability. Discussing the upcoming local elections, the minister said his department had issued around 30 to 40,000 voter authority certificates, and the decision to issue them on A4 pieces of paper rather than in a more conventional form of ID was to make the process as easy and inexpensive as possible. The minister referred to the government's public awareness campaign, additional funding provided to councils, and pilot programs run by his department that suggested less than 0.1% of people will be turned away, as reasons to be reassured that the introduction of voter ID will not cause significant issues during the elections. He also said that an independent review of the introduction of voter ID is already underway, with more details forthcoming. And finally, I just want to draw your attention to two articles in the Local Government Lawyer. The first is entitled, "Don't Shoot Me, I'm Only the Monitoring Officer, Croydon and the Penn Report," by Dr. Paul Field, which is well worth the read and discusses the impact of delayed reports. And the second is an interview with our new president, Rachel McCoy, entitled "Spread Peace, Love and Joy," and gives us a terrific insight into our modern and forward-thinking strategic lead. And on that note, you can read more on the items discussed today and many more besides by going to bulletin number 12, available on the LLG website now. So it's goodbye from me.
And from me too.
Have a good week, everyone.